Hi, I'm Brian Fancher, Director of Best Practices at Tracker Corp. Today I'll be sharing important information with you about how to I-9 remote hire employees. As an employer, there will be times when a person you hire lives or works far away from your offices, or may otherwise have a difficult time connecting with your HR department in order to complete the Form I-9 for employment eligibility verification. This is a surprisingly tricky issue that many HR managers may not think about until it happens. Since the completion of the Form I-9 requires a face-to-face interaction in order to inspect the employee's original employment authorization documents, you have three choices. Either the employee must travel to your HR office, or an I-9 representative from your company must make arrangements to visit the new employee, or more realistically, the employee would visit a Notary Public or other agent who can complete Section 2 and sign the Form I-9 on the employer's behalf. Most employers are not aware of the requirements that can be challenging for using a Notary Public for remote hiring. In fact, there are 5 critical mistakes employers can make when using a Notary Public for filling out the Form I-9 remotely. I'm going to cover these mistakes and help you prevent them in order for you to help maintain compliance for Form I-9 completion when we're hiring a remote employee. First, as most of you probably know, Section 2 of the Form I-9 must be completed and signed by the employer or its representative no later than the 3rd business day after the employee starts work for pay. This requirement can be particularly challenging for remote hires, since it may not be practical or even possible for some remote employees to travel what could be a long distance to visit the employer in person in order to complete the Form I-9. The good news is that the I-9 doesn't have to be signed by the employer's HR department. Alternatively, the employer can designate an employer representative who will act on the employer's behalf and complete Section 2. That's how a notary can help. When using an employer agent, most often a Notary Public, it is imperative that you inform your new remote hire employee of the urgency of getting a notary to inspect and sign the I-9 during this 3-day grace period. If the I-9 is not signed by the deadline, then you'll have to live with having a non-compliant Section 2 signature. Late signatures cannot be corrected, which can potentially carry a much higher fine than other errors during an ICE I-9 audit. Remember, Section 2 of the I-9 form just needs to be signed within 3 business days. The form itself doesn't have to be in your possession, which means that if your remote I-9 hire process is done correctly, you don't have to spend the money to have the form shipped to you by overnight delivery. The second most common remote hiring mistake employers can make is either allowing or asking the Notary Public to overnight or express mail the unsigned Form I-9 and copy of documents, even if it's within the 3-day window. Not only is it a waste of money, it's non-compliant. It's not acceptable for a Notary Public to view employment authorization and identity documents, but leave Section 2 for you to complete. The person who views an employee's employment authorization documents must also complete and sign Section 2 on the company's behalf. Tracker I-9 software makes remote hire compliance easy, especially if you need to e-verify, by enabling the notary to simply fax back the signed I-9 form to Tracker where, thanks to our exclusive web fax barcode technology, the form is automatically scanned and attached to the employee's record in your secure database on our system. The third most common mistake employers make is in assuming that any Notary Public will agree to sign the Form I-9, let alone know what to do with it. Notaries in some states are cautious about and sometimes unwilling to serve as an employer representative for I-9 purposes. Educating the notary is the key. Consider arming your new remote employee with the material he or she needs to instruct and ensure their local notary. Supplying your employee with a notary assistance letter or other explanatory document is the best way to go. For example, Tracker provides a sample remote hire notary form that the employer can email to the new employee with instructions on what to do next. Basically, this form says, we are the employer, we are hiring this individual, but because they can't visit us face-to-face, we're seeking your assistance by you becoming the employer representative. Please inspect the documents. Here are some instructions. Sign the I-9 form, but don't stamp it, etc. It's signed by the employer with direct contact information, and of course, the notary will be paid for their fees for providing the service. Of course, the notary may still choose to say no, but the instructions will make it easier and more likely for the new employee to find one willing to help. The instructions in the notary assistance letter should help prevent the fourth most common mistake with notary hiring, that being the notary stamping of the Form I-9 itself. One of the reasons notaries are sometimes reluctant to participate in this process is that it departs from their usual ritual of stamping the document with the notary seal and signing it. When a notary stamps and signs something, they're saying the person who signed is who they say they are. So if the notary is signing the I-9 and stamping it, they are notarizing their own signature. This is a breach of notary code that goes back almost to the Dark Ages. So the best solution is to instruct the notary to stamp the instruction form you're giving them, but do not notarize the I-9, only sign it. This is because the person signing is not technically acting as a notary, but as the employer representative. The fifth most common mistake with remote hiring can occur when the employer chooses to grant the notary temporary access to the employer's electronic I-9 system. The biggest concern with this approach is that you run the risk of a security breach if granting access allows the notary to view sensitive data. With its exclusive web fax feature, Tracker I-9 software is the only solution that maintains Section 2 signature compliance, but also captures and integrates all of the I-9 data electronically without requiring additional data entry or granting a notary access to your system. With web fax, notary new hires receive a secure email to complete a mostly pre-populated Section 1 and 2. Then they bring a printed copy to any local notary for document confirmation and have the hard copy faxed to the Tracker system, no notary access required, where the record is automatically integrated into Tracker's electronic I-9 system. Thanks to Tracker, new hire in-person meetings aren't required in order to have a compliant I-9. To learn more about electronic I-9 software and Tracker's exclusive web fax technology, visit our website at trackercorp.com. Also, to follow the ever-changing landscape of I-9 and E-Verify compliance, visit my blog at everifyandi9news.com. My name is Brian Fancher. Thanks so much for watching this video.